Words are really powerful. Kingdoms have been brought down with mere words. I remember when Ronald Reagan told, I think it was Brezhnev, tear down this wall. And, the next thing you know, the Soviet Union was falling apart. Today, we're going to talk about how we can use our words in a very effective manner. And one of the greatest skills that we can utilize is assertive communication. So the title of today's session is you don't have to be mean to say what you mean. All right, well, here we go. I hope you're enjoying this little series I'm doing regarding things that I feel like I wish I would have learned at a much earlier age. My dog is wanting a pet, so hang on a second. Go on, dog. And he's just he can't use words, and so all he does is paw at me. But anyway, so today we're looking at one of the most powerful tools I think that can be utilized, and that is learning how to communicate assertively. And a lot of people don't really understand what that is. We have different forms of communication. There's passive, there's passive aggressive, there's aggressive, and there's assertive. And the greatest definition that I've ever heard, really, for me, in regards to assertive communication is quite simply being able to express your convictions with respect for the other person. And I want to give you a biblical example of this. I think one of my favorite examples of assertive communication is when David sinned with Bathsheba. And God revealed this to the prophet Nathan. And Nathan came to David and he told him a story. He appealed to David's heart because he knew that David had been a shepherd. And he also knew that David at his heart was a genuinely good person. And so Nathan told this story about how a man had a little lamb, and he loved that little lamb. The lamb even ate at his own table. And somebody wanted that lamb, and they came in, and they could have had any lamb they wanted, but they took this poor man's lamb, the only one that he had. And David was wroth, the Bible says. He was angry. And he said, just tell me who this person is. He's going to pay for it. He's going to pay for it. And, I've heard preachers preach this message, and they have Nathan standing there with a stern look with his finger pointed in David's face. You're the guy, David. I don't think it was like that at all. I think probably Nathan had tears in his eyes because he loved David. He knew that David was God's anointed, and he knew that God had a plan for David's life, and that David was allowing his desires to mess up what God was trying to do in the kingdom of Israel. And Nathan looked at him with probably tears in his eyes and said, you're him. You're the guy. And, that broke David's heart. And he realized that God had revealed his sin, but he also knew that God had used a man of God to confront his sin in a very powerful, powerful way. That is assertive communication. When we speak to others, we do so, we are basically exemplifying what's inside of us, in our heart, We've all talked to people who are very condescending and self-righteous and judgmental. And, they don't have to come out and say judgmental, condescending things. I mean, the tone of their voice, the words that they use, it may not be a direct attack, but they definitely convey, what they think of us or how they see our situation or whatever it might be, without much understanding. We can get it. We get it, right? And assertive communication is such a powerful tool that can be used in families, in our marriages, on our job site, with our employers, or employees, or whatever it might be. So let's look for a minute at some of the different types of communication skills. Okay, so when we talk about passive communication, Basically, a lot of people think assertive communication is being weak. It's not being weak. Passive communication is a sign of weakness to a certain extent. We're insecure and we don't want we're trying to avoid conflict. We don't want to start something. We don't want to engage in some kind of word war with somebody. And so we tend to just, back up and just not say anything and just stuff it in. And, eventually what you stuff in is going to come out. It's kind of like a can of hairspray. There's a lot of pressure in there. And, and when you finally do let that pop-off valve go, a lot of times it comes out pretty ugly. But really it does more harm to the person who's stuffing it, because over and over again, their emotions are being bottled up. And they are reinforcing to themselves that apparently they are less than. They feel weak. They feel powerless. They feel like a victim, and that is no way to live your life. You know what I'm saying? Aggressive communication is when we are using our words in a very mean way, aggressive way, trying to bully our viewpoint on someone. I think about how Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, one of the passages of scripture there, he says, let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. What was he really saying? He was saying, use your words in a very effective manner. Don't try to manipulate people. Don't try to fool people. Don't try to bully people. Just be genuine. Just be sincere. And I think that's really what assertive communication is that you are genuinely expressing how you feel about something, but yet at the same time with the love of God and with respect for another person. I want to talk about a little bit about the psychology behind assertive communication. And oftentimes, fear of rejection or conflict will lead to passive behavior. Insecurity or control issues lead to aggression. But assertiveness, it shows emotional maturity. It shows emotional maturity. So it shows that we've learned something in life. I was telling a kid in one of my counseling groups, I try to feed into these young guys because, I feel like I got something to give them. And, but oftentimes those young kids, it really depends on what kind of state of mind they're in and whether or not they're really wanting to grow or they're wanting to receive what you might have. Right. And, but I was telling this kid, I said, he was talking about his job and how, he really works hard and he likes his job, but he seems like that his boss is kind of hard on him. And we've all had those jobs. I know I have, where you're out there working a job and, you feel like you're doing the very best you can. And you look around and it seems like every time you see your supervisor, he's kind of looking at you like something's wrong, or he does, and you're telling yourself, this guy don't like me, he just doesn't like me. And so I told him, I said, I want you to try something for me. I want you to give this a shot. When you see your boss next, before the shift ever begins, that way you're not wasting any time on the clock. I said, walk up to him and just say this, sir, I was wondering if sometime during today you might have 5 minutes to spare. I'd like to visit with you about something. And then just go to your workplace and go to work. I can guarantee you that regardless of the disposition of that boss, he is going to give you those 5 minutes because curiosity is going to kill him. He has got to know what it is that you're going to say. And I said, when he gives you those 5 minutes, I said, tell him I appreciate the time that you're allowing me right here. And I just want to say something. I really love my job. And I want to be as good as I can be on my job. And you're my supervisor. I feel like part of my job is not only to do a good job for this company, but also to make you shine, because I'm a reflection of your work as well. And so is there anything that you know of that I can do to improve my work performance or to do a better job? If there is, I would love for you to tell me that. Now, okay, how long did that take? Maybe a minute or two. Can I tell you something? That guy is on his way up in the company. That guy is shining right now. That supervisor is going to look at that fellow and think to himself, wow, this guy's got something going that most of these people do not have going. And he gets it. He wants me to look good, and he wants to be really good on his job. That's a person that you want to, you're not going to leave in an entry-level position. You're going to want to promote that guy as he is able to be promoted. And what happened? What was it really? It was just communication. All it was just assertive communication. Rather than coming into the guy and saying, you know, I've been working here for 2 weeks now, and it seems like you really don't like me. What's your problem? You got a deal or what? You know, that's not going to get you very far. And nor would it get him very far if he just kept stuffing those feelings inside of him, because that message would go over and over in his mind. This guy don't like me. I'm never going to make it on this company. This is as far as I'm going to get right here, because I don't have any favor with this boss. What's eventually going to happen there is the guy's going to quit. He's just going to convince himself, or he's going to tell himself, what's the use of doing a good job? Nobody's going to recognize it anyway. So I'll just do the very minimum that I got to do. And guess what? That guy's probably going to start missing work. He's going to start showing up late. His work performance is going to suffer. He is not going to get very far in that company. But just using that assertive communication skills, you know, in your family, you know, expressing how you feel with respect for the other person. Parents, when you're dealing with your teenagers, you know, I mean, I wish I could go back and redo a lot of my communication that I had with my girls. Because, you know, it's so easy to play that power and control card that we have up our sleeve. Because, you know, we're the daddy or we're the mama or whatever. And, you know, I wish I had known at a younger age that assertive communication would have gone so much further in gaining the respect of my kids, and me showing them respect and really encouraging them and you know, expressing to them, you know, my concerns with respect for what's going on in their life. One thing you can do in order to encourage assertive communication is use your journal. We started out this whole podcast talking about journaling, and I keep going back to it because journaling is such a powerful tool. But you can use your journal in a powerful way with your assertive communication. So, for example, if you've had a conversation, right, and you're trying to evaluate how that conversation went. Maybe it went really well. That's good. I mean, you know, journal about it. Talk about it. Hey, you know, this is what I said. I felt like that I did really well. I was able to express myself with respect for the other person. They understood what my convictions were. They understood my concerns, and I did not make them feel, you know, threatened or less than. You know, pat yourself on the back. Use your journal to give yourself affirmation. If you feel like that you didn't do well, okay, then that's a good time to evaluate and regroup. You know, take your journal. Don't sit there and beat yourself up over the head with it. Determine that I'm going to learn something from this experience. I remember one time I had a TV interview that I was supposed to do when I came out with my second book. I had a guy that was going to interview me on the television, and you know, I did not prepare adequately. And when I went on there, it was supposed to be a one-shot deal. And I got about 3 minutes into that television presentation, and I said, stop the cameras. I was so far out in the weeds in 3 or 4 minutes that I could have never got back. And you could tell it really aggravated the guy. You know, I mean, at first they weren't going to stop the camera. And I just kept saying, stop, we're going to have to do this over again. And he said out of all the years he's done that, that's only happened twice, and I'm one of them. And so I wasn't feeling that great about that. The next morning I got up and I got my journal out, and I thought, what have I learned from this situation? And so I started listing all the things that I needed to do different the next time around if it ever occurred again. And that was to prepare more adequately. You know, I had not eaten that day hardly at all. And before I went to that interview, about an hour before, I had a large Americano, And man, my heart was racing a million miles a minute. My mind could not keep up with my heart. And there was so many things I did wrong. And but I sat down and I just evaluated, and doing that really helped me feel better about maybe the next situation when it comes along. Another thing is if I know that I'm going to be entering into a situation, and a lot of times we do because we're the one planning that conversation. If I know I'm going to be entering into a conversation that's going to be challenging, then I need to sit down with my journal and prepare adequately. Write out what am I going to say, how am I going to present this? And then when I do go into it, I already know what I'm going to say. I'm going to be confident. I'm going to feel good about it. I'm not going to be feeling like I need to rush. I know that, I just need, what needs to be said in a succinct, concise, informational manner, with plenty of respect for the other person. And if they respond in a negative way, how am I going to respond? Already prepare yourself. If that person is going to respond in a negative way, then again, you don't blow up, you show respect. Okay. I said, well, I just felt like I wanted you to know how I felt about this. And I appreciate your time, and move on. Give them time to think about it. Let it germinate. Believe it or not, a lot of times after people think about things, they change their minds. And so another thing is when you're in the process of communicating assertively, be mindful. Stay in the moment, okay? Don't jump ahead of yourself. Don't get caught up in what's already occurred. Just stay in the moment. Make sure that and you know what? You can find joy in every moment. In the time that you're trying to share, you can find joy. Remember, our goal here at Straightforward Therapeutic is to live our life as Jesus would live our life if he were us. And so that's another great thought. How would Jesus communicate? He would communicate assertively. I think about the woman at the well. He communicated to her in a very assertive manner. Did he confront her sin? He did. Did he confront her poor theology? He did. But he did it in such a way that she felt valued. And she recognized that he had something to offer her that was positive. And if you look at the communication Christ had with so many people, they were very assertive. He didn't attack people. Oh, yes, those Pharisees and those religious leaders, he did tell them like it was, at times. But, even then, he was trying to confront them about something they already knew to be true. And so anyway, okay, I've run over a little bit of time here. I hope you've enjoyed this. Listen, get out your journals. Think about the communication that you've had in the past. Where has some of your relationships gone wrong because of poor communication? How can you start practicing assertive communication right now, right where you're at, with your wife, with your husband, with your kids, with your employer or employees, with your friend, whoever it might be. Think about the next hard conversation. And that's another thing is don't be afraid to have those hard conversations. Not having a hard conversation is just another form of passive communication when we just ignore it and just avoid it. The hard conversations sometimes produce the greatest fruit. And so there's a few nuggets for you today. I hope that it's a blessing to you. Remember, we're Straightforward Therapeutics. Get somebody on board. Tell them to get on this train with us, and let's see what kind of change can come about. We're shooting for progress. We're not going for perfection, but we're going to make progress if we keep working at it. And so God bless you guys today.